Facilities Commission meeting for Wednesday, February 15th to order. We don't have any public comment. Let me lead us in a prayer, please. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this day. Father, we're thankful for all of our customers and the residents of Glynn County. Thank you for us being able to work to help improve the water and sewer systems to serve all of these people in the county. We thank you for our staff and all of those and their families. We just pray health for them this year and safety for them as they go about doing the work of the Joint Water and Sewer Commission. Grant us wisdom today as we go about the business. Help us to be wise stewards. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We'll go to the approval section. We need to add one thing to the agenda. What is it, Andrew?
Mr. Chairman, I'll take that if I may. I'll move to amend approval item number 4 on the agenda to add a bullet point and add the easement conveyances for A.H. Tossinson III, parcel 0301950, and Nick and SU Enterprises LLC, parcel 0314379.
I'll second that.
Motion second, all in favor? So be it. Item 1 is the minutes from the December 14th, 2022 Facilities Committee meeting. Do you have any comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second it.
I was not on the committee at the time, so I'll abstain.
All in favor? Motion carries 2-0. Thank you. Next item is Academy Creek Water Pollution Control Rehab Project, change order number 3. Mr. Burris.
Yes, sir. Our Academy Creek project is winding to a close here. This will be the 3rd change order request for this project. Change order number 1 was a few items that came up. There was about 20 items that came up, and there were some gives and takes in the contract, and we came out to a total adder of $64,464. Change order number 2 was heavily influenced by repaving the facility at $400,000. And so it's $427,131 for all items. This change order is for relocating a electrical panel that was installed near the solids handling facility where it was shown on the plans. Upon final inspection, it was deemed by the electrical engineer that the panel needed to be relocated to meet the necessary clearance codes in front of the panel. To relocate that, the subcontractor provided Ruby Collins with pricing, total pricing being $7,577. There still remain a handful of vendor-related punch list items that need completion prior to final project completion, and to finish the punch list items, which are associated with electronics, mostly on different pieces of equipment that have been installed.
Hold the bar. There you go.
They've asked for a time extension of 120 days from their current contract completion time. That would update substantial completion until the end of this month, February 28th, and then final completion would be March 20th, if approved today. So it's a request for $7,577 to relocate an electrical panel and a time extension of 120 days to complete the punch list items.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move that the Facilities Committee recommend the full commission approve change order number 3 for the Academy Creek WPCF rehab project in the amount of $7,577 and approve a time extension of 120 days for Ruby Collins, Inc. to complete the project.
I'll second.
Motion second. Any discussion?
Just a general comment, and I know we've talked about this before, and I don't really know where we landed on it, but, and please educate me on that, being quasi-governmental, how exactly this will work. But one thing I'm used to doing is kind of taking an overall project early on and saying, okay, we estimate this is going to be a $13 million project. Mm-hmm. $1 million for design, $12 million for construction as an estimate. And then it kind of comes to the board and says, y'all have an appetite for this. And then, that you have that discussion, and then you kind of go out to actual contract. So then you go out and procure design fees, procure the actual construction, and now you're working towards that budget that was approved of, say, $12 million, and you kind of do a reset. And, you say, well, now we know that the design is only $500,000 and the construction is only 10. So we got a $10.5 million project budget for design and construction, and then have a small contingency amount so that things like this, you're not, belaboring yourself and holding up the project to get a $7,000 change order approved on a, 10, probably $11 million project by the time you count design.
Right, it is. Two things on that, sir.
This is under a 1% change.
Right, two things on that. One of those, part of the reason this absolutely has to be brought in here is because this is a GFA-funded project.
Okay.
So since the board is the ones that agreed to borrow the money from GFA, the board has to approve any changes to the contract in order for us to get reimbursed for those funds. The second thing, we've been asked by the board to bring all change order requests in here of any dollar value.
Okay. And if that's the board's, if that's our mandate, then that's, I guess that answers my question, but to me,
But this one, regardless of whether that was the
Sure,
board's
yeah, sure.
mandate, because it was GFA oriented, we have to bring it in here.
And I know this is kind of a minor change, but obviously necessary. And I think this is the kind of thing that you couldn't anticipate when you were doing the original design. When all of a sudden you get to things, particularly at a plant like that, it's older, and it was designed a certain way, and I think the standards are different today. Would that be correct?
Well, I think this may have been something we could have anticipated. I think it was just a difference in interpretation by the engineer and the
Okay. contractor
on where it should be located at in a meeting code. And the engineer won out and the contractor requested payment for having to do the work twice.
I guess from my perspective, my point is, if you have a project budget and a contingency,
Sure.
then that does a couple things. One, it doesn't, there's money associated with ensuring that you've got everything accounted for up front.
Right.
There's inefficiency associated with that. So it might be that, the bulk project is a hard bid, then you've got these onesie twosie items that you're not ready to hard bid, that you might carry a line item or an allowance for, whether you call it allowance or contingency, and then you might go out 6 months after the initial work. And, because if you're asking contractors, who are, again, not the bulk contract, but these small onesie twosie ads, if you're asking them to commit today to pricing and work, they're not even gonna start for 2 years just so you can get it in here, then they're probably covering themselves. You might be better off in some of these instances having the flexibility to say, hey, this is $11 million budget. We're locking in $10 million of it today. We're carrying an allowance of $400,000 for whatever this is, because that's what we believe it is. And as we get closer to time, we'll go out and hard bid that aspect with another contractor, and it might be $350, it might be $401. But you got an allowance that you're working towards and a contingency.
We are trying in our contracts to get the engineers to put a lot of additional items in there to cover something like this. And so we would have maybe $15,000, $20,000 on a $500,000 project. And then we have a final summary change order that just handles those things.
Right.
And we just do that.
Well, yeah, and to that point,
Right.
sir, if you look at the pack that on the back page there, it says attachments, it says change order number 3, but change proposal number 27.
Yeah.
So we've worked out a lot of these in the field because we found savings in one area. Okay, well, we're gonna keep that savings in the contract without adjusting the contract price because we know something else is gonna come up. So in this type project, we've worked 24 of the 27 out without having to bring it to you.
Right.
And this project came in over what we originally estimated when it was
Right.
bid, but it's pretty close. This project, if you remember, we got a $15 million GFA loan, and we had $10 million for the plant and $5 million for rehab.
Right.
But actually, we're using a little bit more for the plant,
A little less for
less for rehab.
Right.
So
Yeah, I
from
just
all
wanna-
those change
right.
orders, it would be safe to say that you've been doing value engineering all the way through the project.
Absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And the reason, one thing we've asked for the change orders, going back from when you and I first got on the board with the change orders, we had some issues there.
We did.
And so, obviously, we want to make sure that the commission is up to date, especially the facilities committee, so
Yes,
we
sir.
understand.
So the additional work items that we're adding does give us flexibility for minor things that come up as long as we haven't used those additional work allotments that are in there. And that has given us some flexibility in the field. Unfortunately, we used up all those additional work items on this project.
I just want to give you all the
No, and I-
flexibility to be efficient.
I
flexibility
certainly
to-
appreciate
And
that.
ultimately be efficient with our dollars. Sometimes, if you don't have to have everything under one lump sum contract, you can be more efficient. If there's some onesie twosie items that you pull out of the general contractors, have an allowance for, and then go out and procure,
Yes, sir.
whether it be you're buying a pump directly or whether you're having, a small electrical scope that you manage directly instead of having a part of the GC. There's thousands of different examples. But I just wanna make sure y'all have the flexibility to be efficient.
I appreciate that, yes, sir.
Before the meeting's over, we're gonna be talking about a substantial change order at Dunbar also that's occurred, so. Any other comments?
No more for me.
Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Next item is Pump Station 3102 Electrical Service Contract Award. Mr. Burris?
Yes, sir. Mr. Klein, would you mind pulling this up on GIS for me? Okay, Pump Station 3102 is located adjacent to the Pilot Flying J Travel Center at exit 29. Currently, that station, the electrical service for that station is fed from the Pilot Flying J, and it's approximately 500 foot away, or I believe that's what they said, 500 foot, somewhere in the 200 to 500 foot range away. And there is a failure in the electrical lines coming from a building on the Flying J property into our pump station. And we've had issues in the past with not being able to access the actual disconnects because it's behind a locked door. What we're proposing to do here is to run a dedicated three-phase service into the pump station and get off of the service that is utilized by Flying J. The problem is, if you're familiar with that area, it is very wet right there. And so they're gonna have to bring in matting and do some significant traffic control because the entrance to the Flying J is right there as well. So typically we handle these without having to bring it to you because they usually don't get to above the $25,000 limit. But this one came in at $36,496.18, and that is the cost for Georgia Power to provide the new service.
Where's the pump station?
Right there in the corner.
Right, oh, okay, there it is, okay.
Yeah, how's it behind the locked door? I missed that part.
It's fed off of a maintenance building adjacent that is owned by Flying J. So when the travel center was built, they ran the service from the travel center, and it does not have a dedicated line for that. It's all run through the same feed, and there's something wrong with the feeders in between the station and the travel center.
And Georgia Power doesn't have an easement for that?
Where's the pump
lines are
station?
owned
Where
by
the- is the pump
Right in
station?
right there where the arrow is.
Yeah.
See where he's doing the arrow? Yeah.
Zoom in.
But Georgia Power doesn't have an easement for their own lines?
Georgia Power doesn't own that line.
They don't, okay.
That's owned by Pilot Flying J. We technically don't pay a power bill on it because it's all going through Flying J right now. Once we do this, we'll start taking over our own power bill, but we'll also have a lot more control about what we can do there,
Which is important.
which is important,
Yeah.
yes.
So are we paying Flying J anything right now? Do they know that?
It is what it is.
This is what it is at this point.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? I think I know the answer. What kind of power feed is coming in there? What kind of voltages are we talking about?
I don't know if this one's 230 or 480, but we try to go 480 three-phase coming into
Okay.
all of our stations.
It is, too.
Right.
So that pump station, was it originally private infrastructure?
Yes, this was put in by Flying J and dedicated to us.
So it is.
Think they
We
would
have
pay
an
for the
easement on it
line?
now, or is it?
Yeah, we actually have a parcel.
Okay, we do. It didn't look like when he just clicked.
Is that not we're not having a dedicated parcel there? Or is that just part of the cleanup we're still doing on the property?
It's one of the cleanups,
Just wanted
yeah.
to clean up, so,
Is that one of the pump stations we're gonna upgrade?
No,
Is
sir.
it Force main?
yes,
So if it only serves Flying J, and it's now public infrastructure,
zoom out. Sorry, change my mind. If you'll see that the gravity's actually been extended past the Flying J actually extended the gravity so that we could eventually one day serve those back areas if anything came in on that side.
but is Flying J paying the full rate that any other person would pay?
Yes.
I mean, or they're not getting like a discount because they've got private infrastructure or
Yes,
anything?
they pay full amount.
But basically, it's only serving them right now.
Right now, it's only serving them, but it has open capacity, and of course, the gravity's already been extended, that we could extend to serve more people.
Okay.
This is one of the few stations we got in our system that it was actually planned for future growth.
So where's the electrical line gotta come from?
The other side of Highway 17 over, it's gonna be bored underneath right there.
So, a little off subject here, but that green line there, that's our infrastructure, is that
Dashed green line is force main,
the only thing in the area? I mean,
There's
zoom out,
water in-
please, Mr. Klein.
there's water in there as well, he's got the water letter turned on.
So all that neighborhood at the end of that gravity line, zoom out a little bit more, or push that down, please, on the screen. So we can see north of there. None of that back
None
in
of that's
there.
currently sewer, or water for that matter.
So that, it's not a trailer park, but RV park is back there, that's all private, I mean, it's all on,
The RV park that is, the portion that's being expanded will be coming to our system.
This
Correct.
portion here.
Yeah, they're fixing to basically duplicate what they've got there now.
oh, I'm on the road off, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the interstate as if that's.
It's 303.
Parkway.
There's 303
I
there.
got you, I'm looking at the wrong road.
So the portion of the RV park that's currently is not served by us.
I
The
was-
new portion will be served. They'll go to that pump station in Majestic Oaks.
I was looking at the wrong road there, I was looking at 95 as if it was Black Island.
Yes, we, long-term, there are benefits to us extending lines onto Blythe Island, because right now, that is the extent of the lines we have on Blythe Island right now.
So we're gonna have to start paying for the, for that, okay. We're getting money from it, that's right.
It surprises me that Georgia Power's, I mean, I understand that, 'cause basically the way they're doing it, they say, hey, this is what, the ratio costs, they're referring to what
Right.
they believe they'd get back over time. But, I mean, it seems like for public infrastructure like this, they wouldn't have a choice but to feed it, I mean, even if it's over ratio.
But they'll feed it, but I don't think we're generating enough usage for them there to, because we do have the option of trying to fix what's already there. And so they already have service to the Flying J. We could do that. Looking at it from staff's perspective, we'd rather have dedicated service.
How's
We've
this-
done several of these in the past 5 years where have not had dedicated service, and we've changed to dedicated service. Typically, it's $10,000 to $15,000 to get it done. But given the high traffic, water, everything that's going in there, this one's just more expensive.
Do we have other analogous situations like there where the pump station is paying, where it's only serving one client?
Yes. Well, one client is in one neighborhood, yes. And then, like, we own pump stations on the port property that's only serving the port.
And are they paying the power bill for those, or are they?
Each situation's
I'm
different.
just looking at it from making sure that we're equitable across the system perspective. Cause essentially at this point, I just wanna make sure that we're not getting to everywhere there's a private pump station that really truly is it sounds like this one's already been deeded to us as a moot point, but, we're not setting the standard that every single private
We
pump station.
typically do
A
not.
residence has a little bitty pump station, we're
No,
like, oh.
we
we'll pay that.
typically do not accept pump stations that only serve one customer.
Right.
So even say apartment complex is currently being built on Chapel Crossing. They will have a master meter for all of the water usage coming in, and they'll be building sewer off that master meter. They will have an on-site pumping station in that apartment complex, which they will own and maintain, and, because it serves one customer.
And that's what I'm trying to understand, why this is different.
Because we inherited it. And theoretically, it's the ability to extend it further. We could serve more people, we just currently do not.
Now, the power service to Flying J, where does it come in, Todd?
The power for Flying J probably came out the same place we're gonna tie in for the service to the station, I would guess,
So it comes underneath the interstate?
No, under 17.
under 17 likely.
It's coming
Yes,
in
sir.
at 17.
Blues Water, we don't have the power, Georgia Power will not give us.
Yeah.
their
And we
GIS
can't
list.
tie to that where it comes under 17?
Georgia Power will make that determination, and if they spec independent service, I'm guessing that they're saying they can't.
Are we gonna do three-phase on this?
Yes,
Okay,
they're three-phase pumps, we have to,
okay, yeah.
unless you wanna do the add-a-phase.
So I guess it's not big enough to serve Flying J.
Probably not. That's probably the,
And right now it's on bypass? the
Right now, it's on
station?
bypass.
Okay, so we need to get
Our own
this,
bypass pumps, we're not running bypass, but it is being bypassed right now, because right now it's no phase.
so we need to get this going.
Where's the breakout on the map?
We don't know. We just know it's somewhere in between the station and the Flying J.
Which is where? Where's the maintenance building you referred to? That's the big building.
yeah, I'm not sure where their maintenance building is. Operations would know where that
I
is.
honestly do not know where their maintenance.
I think they have to go and act the panel and all that kind of stuff on occasion. If it's locked, they're out of luck.
We have in storm situations before had issues where we had to wait extended periods of time for someone to come in and open doors for us to do things. Now, luckily, that station doesn't have a ton of flow on it, so it hasn't been a problem, but it's highly inconvenient as well.
Sure, but you also could just set a disconnector on the property and that could be your isolation source.
Yes.
Instead of having to fool with them every time, you could just, I mean, you could put a
And yes,
disconnect on
when
the
we
property.
do,
and then-
that's one of the things, a lot of our stations, when they were constructed, do not have main disconnects at the station.
Yeah.
All of the stations we are rehabbing are getting main disconnects
Absolutely.
installed at the station.
And I think that'd be worth going back and looking at. I mean, and candidly, maybe, you know, better use of funds is, you know, making sure that we do have main disconnects so that our employees, because the last thing we wanna do is have an employee who goes out there and says, you know, I really should isolate this, but that's gonna be a pain in the butt. It's gonna cost money, it's gonna cost time, it's gonna make me late to get home. I think I can probably safely do it without it, and then they'll get up hurting themselves because they, you know, they're bending the rules because we put them in a situation where it's easy to bend the rules. I mean, I would say we need to make it a priority. If we've got a pump station that we cannot isolate that pump station from the utility, you know, it's not that much to put a main disconnect in. I mean, even if it's just a, you know, knife blade throw. I
We'll
think-
certainly put a list together, and let y'all look at, consider what that's gonna cost us.
I think that makes a lot of sense, so.
I mean, I agree with you, it needs to be done. We've got a lot of pump stations that don't have it.
But I mean, you know.
Just giving you a heads up.
Sure, you know, and it might be that we have to prioritize.
Right,
I
right.
mean, we might not be able to do them all in one fell swoop, but I mean, I could see a scenario where somebody said, you know what, I probably should isolate this, but there's no way without calling Georgia Power, I'm just gonna take the shortcut and then I'm getting hurt.
Safety is more important.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, we ready to do the motion?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll move the Facilities Committee recommend the full commission approve a contract award to Georgia Power Company in the amount of $36,496.18 for the installation of new electric service to pump station 3102.
I'll second.
Motion second, all in favor? Motion carries. Getting back to that, how many stations do we not have I can't believe we don't have manual disconnects at each pump station.
I don't wanna hazard a guess, but it's a lot.
About like 10 or like, I mean, how many pump stations we got total?
165.
165.
And how many of those do we have transfer switches?
Currently,
Yeah,
like a dozen.
okay.
But the transfer switch would be downstream of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
mainstream discounts.
So they have to go, how do they cut off power to it then?
We have to call Georgia Power and get them to do it at the transformer.
Well, right, which is my point. Is
Yeah,
that,
that's how we have to do it right now.
that's not good. I mean,
No, it's not. I agree.
But what
Now,
kind
if
of-
we've got, you know, disconnects on the pumps, disconnects on this, disconnects on that.
Right, we have disconnects for all the pumps, but if we have to do anything to the power coming in,
Yeah,
we can't disconnect that without calling.
I'd love to just see one if you don't mind. I mean,
Okay,
maybe-
we'll take it. We'll get you. I'll call Systems Pump and get a couple of examples. We'll go take a look at them.
I'd love to see one. I mean, I'm gonna let
are
Trish.
some of them large pump stations?
Not, I mean, most of the large pump stations are not that way, but I'll keep that, of the 165 stations we got, 120 of them are small pump stations.
We might not need a disconnect that'll do everything at once. I mean, as long as we have the ability to isolate everything that would ever be maintained. And it sounds like we don't.
We don't.
There's a main disconnect in the panel though, the control panel. Is it?
Most of the older stations have control, power, and high voltage in the same panel. What we're doing now on all of our new stations, there's a low voltage panel with all the control wiring and control components in it that is separate completely from the high voltage panel. But most of the old stations are all in one panel.
Well, and it might be worth looking at. There's no reason that if you get the right type of disconnect, the right type of transfer switch, it might be cheaper to have the transfer switch be a dual combo transfer switch and disconnect.
Yes.
As long as the transfer switch got a neutral position and it's not,
Yeah,
you know,
the transfer switches we spec are all 3-pole. So you got a neutral, you got utility, and you got the generator power.
there's truly a neutral position.
Yes.
When I say 3-pole, I'm thinking 3-phase.
No, sorry, yeah, it's got a neutral position. Yes,
Three
all the-
position.
Yeah, 3 position, yes.
So
All of them we
that
spec
would be
that.
equivalent to actually shutting it
You
off.
could do that, throw it into neutral, and then you're disconnecting everything. Yes.
As long as you can lock it out neutral.
Right.
I'd love for me and you.
Yeah, we can go take a look at a few of
Oh.
them. I'll get some examples because we have several pump stations that we
We got
can.
one of those.
So.
Do you have them via email?
I don't know which ones would be the best
was-
examples,
brought
but
it
I can
in
find
and
out.
saved it, so I'm like,
Next item is dedications of
Okay.
private infrastructure and easements. Mr. Klein?
Thank you. All right, good afternoon, Commissioners. Go to the memo here. And this is the agenda item that, the second, or, yeah, the additional 2 easements were added. Heavy in graphics. Okay, there's 3 separate items to consider. And I'll walk through these 3 items individually here. Okay, first is Sweetwater Phase 2. That is dedication of infrastructure. And then you'll also notice within the memo itself, there is a location map or vicinity map. And there's also a snapshot from GIS. Typically, we'll highlight the areas of interest that we're talking about. And then the actual documents, whether it be dedication documents or easement plats or record drawings, are attached as exhibits on the back side. So you should have all those materials in your packets. So the first one here is Sweetwater, which is on the north end of Glynn County. Zoom into that guy there. Just north of the former Coastal Pines Golf Course off of Golden Isles Parkway is the subdivision of Sweetwater. And they've been doing some extensions and build out of that subdivision. As part of that, they installed a little bit of new gravity sewer. You can see in the sections that are highlighted on the GIS map there. And then also, if you've got the handouts, might have to skip around through here a little bit.
So this is basically just a recent development, all the infrastructure's in, we've inspected it, and we're ready to turn it over to us.
We've inspected, performed
Excellent summary.
testing, manhole inspection, CCTV, the whole 9 yards.
Do you wanna take these as one approval?
One approval motion if
Unless
that.
there's a reason y'all don't want to approve
Yeah.
it.
Correct. Okay, all right, moving along. Second one here is Olive Way, which was had to do with an abandonment. Sometimes property owners will petition Glynn County or the city for an abandonment of public right-of-way for various reasons. In this case, the public right-of-way, or excuse me, the public right-of-way that they, go to GIS as well. The public right-of-way contained a segment of gravity sewer that we need to remain there and remain and have access to in perpetuity. So what we requested from those folks, or from the applicant that's doing the abandonment, is to dedicate joint water and easement, and that's exactly what they did with that one.
So when you got something like that that is public, and then all of a sudden they're making it private, but we're wanting to keep a portion of it public, are we having to pay for that, or does the applicant have to pay for all of the costs associated with that?
The applicant will pay, good question, Commissioner. The applicant will pay for all the surveying costs, anything to do with that. Now, we will have associated legal review costs with joint water, that type of thing, staff costs, obviously, to review these applications. So
We have had
I think
people
we
that
need-
have done abandonments and actually paid to move our asset out of their abandoned right away, and that's on their dime.
Sure, I mean, I would, it's my 2 cents, but I would think that, we need to work with the county, and if somebody's abandoning, if the county is abandoning property and basically just giving it to, because they're not buying it from the county, right? They're getting it for free from the county. And then all of a sudden, joint water sewer's gotta pay to give somebody free land. I mean, I think we need to work with the county, and if the county's gonna abandon something that's got our infrastructure under it, that the homeowner needs to, or the person who's getting that property, needs to pay all associated costs, maybe even including, our fees, such as your, a fee to joint water sewer to,
We do have a fee
Review
for
it.
reviewing it.
we do have a review fee. It's a nominal, I think it's
I'm not trying to
$100.
get rich off of it, I just wanna
Right.
make sure that we're covering our costs, and, cause
Right.
ultimately it's cost, and there's no point in the rest of the ratepayers paying for somebody else to get free land.
That is true. But JDC Legal's time could be possibly, because they will review it for the, to make sure that everything's
Yeah,
straight.
I mean, we're paying Charlie's team to,
Right.
Yeah.
I think that needs to be part of the homeowner responsibility, or property owners.
We could certainly look at our fee for what one of these abandonments costs for us to review and include an estimate of legal fees that'll be associated with that and include that as a portion of the fee for reviewing it.
Okay, that is the second one.
That's
I'll-
my 2 cents.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry. Yep, okay. If we're ready, we'll move along to the next one. Move it back up here to the memo itself. Takes a little maneuvering. Okay. Now, the one that was added to the agenda here is for what's known as the, there's development at the gas station that's going in off Community Road. Now it's known as Wawa. That's the brand of gas station that's going in. The folks with Wawa came to us to reach the Joint Water Sewer Commission's collection system for their wastewater. They have to traverse 2 other properties. And so they got together with those property owners and they're deeding easements to the joint, or hope to deed easements to the Joint Water Sewer Commission to facilitate that. And I'll show you. So the 303 or Community Road, catty corner to the old pumpkin patch. There's a GIS map of the area here is where the gas station is proposed. And the easements we're talking about come down the right side of the adjacent properties to get to our system to discharge here, this manhole. I'll jump over to GIS. Once again,
This is for the gravity sewer.
so
Force main from their pump station on site.
they're gonna have a privately owned and maintained grinder station to serve their, gravity's not deep enough to serve their facility by gravity. So their option was limited to pumping. So that's the way in which they're gonna convey their wastewater down the right side of this, their neighbor's properties,
What size is the force main?
2-inch. 2-inch. So, in talking.
Anybody else ever tie into that force main?
Yes, sir, absolutely. So that's one of the reasons that we encourage them to deed that to us. Once the force main exits their property, it'll become Joint Water Sewer Commission property. Therefore, any new customers can tie onto it. Typically the process, and also why we are requesting the easements to be
We
public.
did 341 up there at Community Road and 341 in the Friendly Express.
Yes, sir, right here.
Didn't we put in a 4-inch force main then?
An 8-inch.
I thought
And
it-
that was
I thought
to,
it was 4-inch force main.
so, 6 right here. That's
I know
the,
I know we paid a difference to increase the size of the force main from what was necessary for the Friendly Express to tie on.
that's right.
We pushed it across 303, didn't we?
It's across 303, it is.
Should we do the same thing here?
2-inch will carry presumably enough flow to accommodate whatever would be developed in these couple of lots.
Zoom out. Now, water will be brought under Community Road
Up here.
to serve this project. So there's already water right there. Go to the north. In theory, if we wanted to extend something, you would extend off of this gravity system that's already coming off of Old Jessup,
Which is where that green system.
that green line, and then you could branch off that direction.
So that Hardee's there, that Friendly Express, it's not a Friendly, it's Parker's. That Hardee's and that Parker's and the Dollar General and all that is on,
Private grinder stations, and they
Right.
pump that red dash line to our gravity system up there on Old Jessup across from, the Ballard Center there.
so that Hardee's and that Parker's is grinding their own stuff, pumping it down that little section of 303 across the county's property
Yes,
and into our,
that is correct.
Also note, we have a satellite agreement, which clarifies by Glynn County ordinance, satellite agreements required when there's the owner of private infrastructure that discharges to our system. So, sometimes those are challenges, but we require those with every project that has associated private infrastructure, especially when it's shared amongst adjacent properties.
so what's that Dollar General doing? They got a septic tank
Yes.
and all those houses up 3 or
Every-
82?
Yes.
that is ripe for customers up this area. Both sides.
We've got estimates on what it would take to sewer Dallas Point, Anderson Landing, Piggott Landing over there. We're looking at $15 to $20 million.
These
It's ROI, though,
these red
20 years,
fitting looking things,
way more.
or those are septic tanks. Those indicate septic tanks, so you can see the peppering red.
What do again?
Turn the pictures off.
This
So it
looks like a red fitting.
It'll look less.
Oh, yeah, I
Right.
see it now, yeah, okay, oh, wow.
That might help.
All those little red things on there.
Those are all septic?
All these guys,
Okay.
those are all septic tanks. Indicates that.
And show where we did the study to evaluate the feasibility of that. We had a study done,
Right there from that neighborhood, those neighborhoods right there.
but it went on the other side of 341 too, a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, we did this between Old Jessup and 341 up to the canal up there. We also looked at what it would cost to do that. There's not a lot of density in there,
But we also had a survey done,
yes, and there was limited interest.
yeah.
So where's the building going again?
So zooming back in a little bit. This is 303 coming in off Blythe Island. The former pumpkin patch was right here, catty corner to it. This is where the
$100 tire.
Wawa, yeah, there's a tire store there now.
So they're
Formerly,
taking all three of those parcels,
yes,
but only two of them involve easements.
correct. These easements here, this one here, and then this one here.
Gotcha. And this developer is paying that portion for the easements.
They are. Again, except for staff, there is a review fee
Yeah,
nominal.
but that's for new business, I don't see an issue with that, that's totally separate than the point I was trying to make a minute ago, in my opinion. I mean, does that
Yeah,
make
it makes
sense?
sense. I understand what you're saying.
I mean, in other words, there's no gain for joint water sewer, there's no gain for our ratepayers. Here is, I mean, additional customers, additional public health.
And the line comes down south to tie in, right?
Yes, we'll tie into a manhole right there near the railroad right away.
They will tie into this manhole here. Right.
I mean, that all makes sense to me. On a side note, I mean, that Dollar General's not that old. Why does our ordinance allow,
They are more than 500 foot from the public water and sewer system,
it is 500 feet?
for the sewer system. They're on water, but they're more
They
than
won't
500
be,
feet.
they won't be now though, will they?
The public will begin down here.
So they'll probably still be more than 500.
They'll still be more than 5.
I'm surprised it's 500 feet across there, but I guess, I mean, obviously they measured it.
And it's 500 feet from the nearest property corner, so not where you're landing your building at, it's from the nearest property corner
Yeah.
Property corner to actual line,
to the actual line.
and that's the way the crow flies. So that railroad track doesn't count, you could go.
Technically, yes, but obviously the railroad is a whole other animal.
Yeah, sure.
That's, if you wanna know why none of that stuff's probably been sewered in the past, it's probably because there's a railroad running through the
Right,
middle of
yeah,
it.
which-
I
That's
don't think
just-
so. Almost as good as it going under an interstate, right?
I'd rather do what you guys.
Mr. Chairman, if you're ready, I'll move the facility committee recommend the full commission approve and accept these projects with associated dedicated easements, unless another commissioner wants to pull one of the three projects out.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, there's a motion second. All in favor? Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you.
Next item's on-call boring services extension, Mr. Burris.
Yes, sir. Back in August, we are granted approval for a contract award to company DNC Directional Boring LLC for on-call boring services for water main installations. That was in effect for 6 months as sort of a trial period to see how it goes. We're at the end of that 6-month period, and both parties are very pleased with the success of that project to date. They have agreed, DNC has agreed to hold their pricing where they have been for the past 6 months and extend this for an additional 6-month period. The request today is to simply do that, or extend the existing contract 6 more months. We've used this to do a lot of work in St. Clair subdivision on the island. Menendez and Rivera, what's that, El Dorado? I think that's a subdivision on the island, and then some work on the mainland in some smaller areas of sections. Instead of having to open cut and dig all these 2-inch galvanized lines, most of what we have borne is the 2-inch lines, and we are also going to use this contract awarded it to them already to replace the lines in Wesley Oak Circle, a neighborhood on St. Simon's as well. That will be up to 8-inch lines in a couple of those areas. So this is a very effective tool for us, and we'd like to extend it for 6 more months.
Is there minimal footage
No required minimum for us to proceed.
and no mobilization costs?
Mobilization, we asked them to price it with their mobilization included in the cost per foot.
Is that pipe inclusive too?
We buy the pipe separate. That's the one thing that helps us with the pricing, and the reason they're willing to hold it is because they're not subject to the whims of the pipe market. We provide pipe. They bore the mains, they pressure test them, we install all the services off of them.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that the facility committee recommend the full commission that we approve the additional 6-month extension of the existing on-call boring services contract to DNC Directional Boring LLC.
I'll second that.
Motion and second.
How much have we used up in this period of time?
Let's see, I
Ballpark
think
estimates?
we've put in $50,000 worth of pipe, or worth of their labor. So pipe included, you're close to $100,000 worth of pipe and labor included, and we've got another $150,000 already under purchase order to them to continue moving forward with.
And they
So-
pretty much will work on our schedule.
They coordinate with our schedule to make sure everything's ready to go. So we've done all but one of the cul-de-sac areas on the St. Clair neighborhood, and we're fixing to do the main cross streets in St. Clair. So we're snatching out a decent well. We haven't got it out of the ground, obviously, because we're still tying everything in, but the tie-ins should begin next week for a lot of the St. Clair neighborhood. And in St. Clair also, that one neighborhood, Wesley Oaks, are doing the same thing. We're increasing some line sizes in a couple of areas to, so we can locate hydrants. Right now, there's some existing lines that don't meet what would be today's hydrant spacing requirements, and so while we're in there, we're gonna run lines so that we meet current hydrant spacing requirements.
Thank you.
Should we consider a year contract rather than 6 months?
They didn't wanna hold their prices for a full year,
Okay.
because they've already done 6 months, this will be 6 more months, they didn't wanna hold it for another year. I think if this continues to work well, we'll probably go back out and get additional pricing just to make sure all the contractors are kept honest on this in 6 more months. But this has been a very effective tool for us.
So just point of reference, I guess when I read it as on-call, I was thinking that was like, for emergency service and stuff, but if they're gonna schedule it within 3 weeks, it's not really necessarily.
It's not for emergencies, it's for, we know this needs to be replaced, rather than us having to go out and open dig everything. We call them, say, hey, we've got pipe on the ground, and they respond within 3 weeks to install the pipe. So on-call might not be the best term, maybe as needed is a more appropriate terminology for that. But it's planned capital upgrades.
Any other questions?
So nothing for me.
All in favor? Motion carries 3-0. Move to the discussion section, water production report. Mr. Burris.
Yes, sir. Our report looks half full this week because we only have 1 month in the new year. So we moved all of the 21 data off because we keep 2 years worth of data on the sheet for you. In the Brunswick district for the water production, a little over 5 million gallons of water per day used on average in the month of January. A lot of that, of course, has to do with usage patterns for people being in town, but also the first part of the year was very cold. We suspect we were using more water during that period. You'll see a few changes worth noting. Howard Coffin, we had some work done at Howard Coffin well, so that went down about half of what it was doing previously. And Brunswick Villa appeared to pick up the bulk of that additional flow. The Fletsey well has been down doing some maintenance activities there, so very little flow coming from the Fletsey well. And all in all, the other ones are fairly consistent where we have been, but no received taste and odor complaints for the month. And if you look at our flow graph for on the next page, you'll see that the flow very much in line with where it was at the Brunswick district this time last year. So that, I mean, this is a good kind of look if you look at where the usage patterns are per month in our district. You see during the summer, of course, you're going to get more usage for outdoor usage and more people being in town. You can see a dip in the fall and then it picks back up over the holidays.
Why would like, I mean, just something jumped out at me, like Canal, on the total water produced for the month, it's 20 times what it normally is in the month of December.
Canal Road well is actually, we call it a fire well, which is not an official term. It's being converted to a production well. So typically, well, it's not typically, what we do is we go out once a month and turn the well on and let it run. I believe what happened in December is somebody turned the well off, went to another site and forgot it was running, and then came back and cut it off later.
So it's just used 21 times the usage.
It's just more water being pumped out at that day. Typically,
Is it tied into the system?
No, it dumps on the ground.
Yeah.
Conversely, you know, you've got some, I was just curious why the swings, I mean, just for learning purposes. But
Yeah, some of the swings are because of which elevated tank they may be tied to, which are draining more, and so that it's having to fill more frequently. We're working with some of the stuff we're doing now, trying to get these a little more balanced. Obviously, we need the FLETC wells running more than what they're running, and need to get some of the flow off of the I-95 well. It's not running over capacity, but if one of them's running 30 million gallons and one of them's running 3 million gallons, trying to balance that a little better would help all of our well sites a little bit.
What's the capacity of each one of the wells?
The well capacity is technically 1 MGD, but of course, there's more there, but they're rated for 1 MGD,
1 MGD.
Each one?
each one.
And do the tank
Technically, well,
size,
it's 1,000 gallons a minute, so that's 1.4 MGD.
do
My
the,
apologies
do
on
the
that.
tank sizes vary from location to location?
Ground storage tank sizes vary and elevated storage tank sizes vary. For example, the Prince Street tank is 750,000 gallons.
Right.
We have some, the smallest tanks we got, 300,000.
I believe, yes,
What about at FLETC? Is there a storage tank there?
There is an elevated storage tank in FLETC.
There is.
We have, how to put this? We are doing some investigations because there's got to be a valve shut somewhere that has caused FLETC's usage to go down.
Right.
FLETC itself uses more water than what that well is running. So there's water coming onto the FLETC site that is not being produced by the FLETC well. So something's got to be closed because water's not getting off the site.
Right. That's what it sounds like.
So you said max production is 1.4.
1.4.
Understanding there's, that's just a nice.
That's a rated, right?
Right. I mean, so some of these, and I'm just asking, some of these are like 1.44, slightly over. I mean, is that area we need to be looking at capacity in the future, or is that?
That's areas that we need to be looking at, trying to change how we're operating the wells versus the tanks. So we've got a current project under design for North Mainland water loops. For example, the I-95, if you look at the I-95 well, it runs a lot. Once one of the loops on the water project will allow the Ridgewood tank well to help that I-95 area, because right now it's not looped together. So we can change which wells run to which tank and try to balance that a little bit.
Because Ridgewood doesn't go anywhere that,
Right, Ridgewood doesn't go anywhere near that amount of water a day.
that amount, yeah.
So again, if you took, say, the I-95 well and you took 200,000 gallons a day off of that and put it on Ridgewood, now they're both running 800,000 gallons a day or 900,000 gallons a day versus one doing 1.3, one doing 0.6.
So it's more balancing act than it is
Yes.
anything else.
Very much a balancing act.
Which wells are the Miocene wells?
Golden Isles 1 and 2 on the mainland.
What?
Miocene wells are 2 aquifers.
Yeah.
And so when Canal is put online, we won't run those as much, is that correct?
In theory, yes, sir. Especially Golden Isles 1, because they're located very near to each other. So Golden Isles 1, you should see a reduction in. When we get the elevated storage tank built at exit 42, obviously we'll have to change which wells pump to different directions, and we'll have to keep that in mind.
Are we doing any kind of trending on the taste odor complaints?
Yes.
Because, I mean, those look like really, really small numbers for a community our size. I mean, surely there's more than 3 people that got to complain about the water
The
smell.
only people that
no matter how
call-
good a job we're doing. I
No,
mean,
but that's the number of people that have called our offices complaining about.
right, yeah, that's what
This is a
I
number.
guess I'm asking that because, I mean, that there doesn't seem like there'd be a lot of science behind that if we're trying to trend it, because you get the same homeowner called for the same well 3 times, and it's just such a small data subset, it doesn't seem like it'd be statistically valid.
Sure. Yes, and some of them are the same homeowner calling about things.
Right, so that's what I'm saying, so I mean, I just wonder how valid the data is.
All right, to that point, on St. Simon's Island, if you look at the report on St. Simon's Island on taste and odor complaints, you see back in October there was 5, which is a lot more than we typically get. And why was that? Because we had a lot more people in town that aren't used to being here. And Georgia, Florida weekend, I think we got 4 of those 5 calls. So yes, it's entirely on who calls in. St. Simons, water usage a little bit down for the month of January, obviously. We had some leaks on St. Simons for the month of December that got corrected. But 2.8 million gallons a day on St. Simons Island during the month. As you see, Commissioner, this one's a lot better balanced across the 4. The Hampton, well, obviously at the very far north end of the island, doesn't run as much as some of the other ones. But the other 3 for the month, very well balanced on St. Simons for that. So that's kind of the goal. We try to get them as balanced as you can get throughout the month. But one thing to note, if you look at the graph, last year in January versus this year, we substantially more water usage in the month of January for St. Simons, 23 versus 22. We have seen some customer growth over there, but not enough customer growth to explain that big of a difference in water usage. So, and this is measured at the well site, not at the well sites, not at the meter sites. So, a little curious if we might have had a metering issue back last January for the number to be that low. And then at exit 29 at the South Mainland, 3 wells down there. Commissioner Stevens, like we said, on the Canal Road well, exit 29 well is the same situation. It is not a current production facility. There's a SPLOST project that will convert that into a production facility. But 275,000 gallons a day at exit 29 for the month of January, very much in line with where we are month to month down there.
But when we convert the ones from fire wells to regular wells, we're using like the Ridgewood model? that
Yes.
kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with every project, you learn new things that you want to change.
Right.
So Ridgewood kind of is what we're basing it off of, with some tweaks that we think might need to happen with maybe the way the building is being laid out and piping is being laid out. But yes, very similar to what we've done in the other areas.
It's an attractive facility.
Well, and, you know, all staff,
Yeah.
operations staff like having the same thing in every place because it makes their life easier as well.
What's the status of the plans on the Canal Road well?
We're, Commissioner, we're gonna touch on that in the report as well. We're waiting on a couple things before we advertise the final opinion of calls from the engineer. And then also the, I believe we're still waiting on the EPD to come back.
So, on the North Mainland, or not more North Mainland, but Brunswick District, which is totally isolated from the island, obviously, but it's also totally isolated from
South Main.
South Main.
Yes.
So our average daily consumption over this timeline, production was 4.991,
That's correct.
5 million gallons. And the wastewater treatment plant saw 6.4 million.
Yes, sir.
So we've got, and then you go to the islands, and it's 2.887 water and only 3 wastewater treatment inflow.
Yes, sir.
So it's a very, very small margin, I guess, of stormwater that's getting, rainwater, stormwater, other water getting into the wastewater.
No, sir. 2 things. On the mainland, Pinova, King and Prince, Rich Products do not use our water. They send us their sewer.
Okay.
So you're getting over 1 million gallons of sewer a day from them that is not using our water system. So that's gonna automatically make the sewer flows at Academy Creek higher than
Okay.
what the water usage. Obviously, there's I&I incorporated with that as well.
Well, that's what I was trying to calculate, is kind of how much
St.
of,
Simons, when you're saying that gap's a little smaller, there's a lot more outdoor water usage on St. Simons for irrigation customers than there are on the mainland as well. So the gap is smaller in water usage versus sewer usage, but also more of that water usage is for irrigation.
so there's no way really to calculate the I&I based
The
on
best
this.
way to calculate the I&I is to look at the BOD numbers on the influent coming into the plant. If it's below 250, basically what's the ratio below 250? 250 would be standard domestic wastewater. That'll give you some idea.
And what made, well, the reason it jumped in my head, I was, was just saw something on TV the other day talking about there was a system somewhere that was smoking the system, and I knew we'd smoked the system, a couple, 3 years
Right.
ago. I mean, is all that work complete that we found from those?
All of the easily completed work, yes. Clean out caps, things like that. We still have some manholes that we know need to be rehabbed, and we're prioritizing those. But clean out caps, cross connections with storm drains, those have all been completed.
All the stuff on private infrastructure been completed?
All the ones that we've been able to The vast majority of them, not all of them. Some customers have given us a few frustrations on that, but
What do we need to do to tell them it's time to fix it? I mean, is there?
it's a code enforcement issue that we're working through. So on the wastewater flow report, if you look at that BOD influent concentration, say this is not a hard and fast number. But if you see the average influent into Academy Creek is 198, so let's say 200. If an average is 250, of what domestic wastewater would be, give or take, you've got 20% ionide coming in. That's, you know, that's not an official rule, but that's just an estimate of what you're looking at.
I would say the 250 rule would be better for Dunbar.
Yeah, because there's
maybe
not any-
200 for Academy.
Because there's less industrial flow, right? Same way at exit 29, you cannot use that rule for exit 29 because a lot of the water coming in at exit 29 comes from the port where they're washing vehicles. It does not have actual sewer in it. It's wash water coming from vehicles, so it is naturally depressed on what the BOD is coming in.
Right.
Interesting. Thank
And
you
the
for
port uses their own water,
Use their own water.
but we
take their sewer.
We take the sewage.
Thank you for the.
All right, move to the wastewater plant.
Yes, sir. So the good thing we had in the month of January is it was quite dry. So Academy Creek effluent flow for the month. This is the first time I remember it doing this in the 5 years I've been here. The effluent flow at Academy Creek for the month of January was 4.9. That's the first time I've ever seen it under 5 for the month. You will note there that the influent number is substantially higher than the effluent number, which should send off red flags. We had a check valve situation with a pump and it was recirculating. So it was counting it twice. So that number should be closer to what the effluent number is once we get the February numbers in. So pretty consistent coming into the plant from where our averages are for the month. Obviously, without a lot of rainfall, we did. You would expect that to be fairly consistent. Effluent concentrations still doing pretty good. Obviously, the filter's back online. The TSS dropped back down to where we would expect it to. You'll look at the enterococci number. I will say we've changed the testing method we're doing there to something that is a lot less labor intensive. And so you'll be seeing some slightly different numbers on that. Just because the testing method we were doing, essentially it was either a 1 or it was a violation because of the way that test worked. We now have a testing method that gives us a little more granularity on what those numbers actually are. But 98% BOD removal and TSS removal for the month, and even consistent on the sludge tons to the landfill. Below average, but the average includes the 3 months at the beginning of 22 when the dryer was not working. So pretty close to average if you take those months out. On our graph on the next page, you'll see the dot, no lines, but the dot there, obviously 500,000 gallons lower than where we were this time last year. That's always a good sign. Dunbar Creek, 2.7 million gallons a day going out for the month of January. Influent concentrations very much in line with where they have been. Effluent doing very well. Ongoing project work there getting kicked off in much higher rate. 98% again removal BOD and TSS at the facility. So still running with one basin there. Hopefully have the other basin back online sometime in March. Again, though, flow lower for this month of January than the last month of January, so starting the year off with a good trend on St. Simon's Island.
68% capacity, is that? Okay.
Under the permit limit you got at the bottom, the permit is
That's a
only-
monthly average.
That's a daily number for the average for the month. I said-
Yes.
said it. You know what I mean?
Monthly daily average flow,
Thank
yes.
And that's affluent only.
Effluent only, yes. Technically influent as well. The influent and the effluent should be the same. But metering and accuracies mean they're not the same.
So it doesn't matter.
We're not losing water in the middle of the plant, is what I'm saying.
It doesn't matter that we're over 1 month.
Yes.
It does.
It's a violation if you're over 1 month, yes. So anything in orange you see on there is a violation, except for the percentages. The percentage violation is just to give us kind of a, hey, this thing's getting up there type month. But the 4.1 month, I think it was September, October,
Yeah, September.
that was a violation of our permit.
So our average is now 80% of permit.
Yes.
What is the plant's capacity, not the permit capacity, but actual,
4.
I mean, so in other words, you can't,
We'd have to add a clarifier to get to 5.
I
The
mean-
aeration capacity will be there, but we'd have to have a clarifier to get to 5.
So what, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here, but what is, I mean, we're at average of basically 80% now. What is our tipping point for when we say, hey, we need to start talking about additional capacity? Because Island's still growing every day. And how does that translate to units?
Usually when you get to 75% capacity, you want to
Right,
start. looking
75,
at it.
80% is what we start.
So
If
we're
you
at,
know, we've already got a project going on at Dunbar. And part of it, we had the clarifier in it, and right now we've taken it out because of the cost. We evaluated, we got a new price from them for the clarifier. So Andrew's gonna be talking about that when we get into the projects, I think.
so how much will that increase capacity with the new
From 4 to 5.
4 to 5?
100 gallons per day per person, give or take.
How many how many units are in the average million gallons of, how many units does it take? How many houses does it take to
Between 3,000 and 3,500,
get to a million?
get to a million. Now, restaurants,
Yeah, sure, but I mean, the reality is that Island's growing residentially, not necessarily commercially.
right, I think we could go to 5 and give ourselves some cushion, 100%. We know we got I&I in there. Do we want to, clarifier estimate's like $4 million. Don't quote me on the exact number. It's like $4 million to do that. It could be done. We require additional permitting. I don't think the permitting would be an issue, but until you got a permit in hand, you just never know.
And I'm just doing some back of the napkin math, but I mean, if the permit's 4, we're already average of 3.2 actually. I mean, you know, I'm just trying to do the napkin math to see how many thousand houses it takes per 10%.
We probably got room for a couple thousand more houses in St. Simon's Island right now without changing the permit.
But that's pushing up at 100% capacity,
Yes,
not, and we're.
yes, absolutely.
You can figure 1 million gallons is for 10,000 people.
Yeah, 10,000 people, so
5 million would be 50,000 people.
Obviously the
Yeah,
number,
that's helpful, yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying.
number of residents per household in St. Simon's is probably lower than it is elsewhere in the county, because you got a lot of retirees. So, typically, the census says 2.6 people per household in Glynn County. You're probably lower than that on St. Simon's. And down at Southport, 386,000 gallons a day going through Southport, which is almost exactly what our average has been for the past 13 months. Like I said, Commissioner Stevens, you'll always have lower BOD coming into that facility because of the port usage. But the plant handled it as expected when you're only at 25% capacity very well. 96% removal BOD, you will get lower BOD percent removals because there's less BOD coming in to be removed. And TSS at 98% removal for the month. So plant being operated very effectively by staff at exit 29 as well.
Good.
Okay? Going to the project photos now.
Yes, sir. All right, Academy Creek, I'll start off since this is the first project.
Take it away, sir.
Academy Creek, you see some photos there, the sludge offloading facility. This is the only portion of the project that has not been granted substantial completion for the current designed improvements. We have some changes that will have to be done after the contract is done due to some design issues, but the contractor is trying to get out from under their existing contract because they're having to pay for bonds and insurance to maintain the contract right now. So the sludge offloading facility, they're still working through some issues there, but hopefully that'll be started up by February the 28th, as we just did a time extension for that if approved tomorrow. But that is the only thing remaining on that contract other than punch list items related to some electrical things, just because a lot of the electronics that were sent as a portion of the vendor package provided on, say, the bar screens or the filters or some meters that we've got are having issues, and we're waiting on replacement electronics.
So everything's working on the live bin except for the elevation.
No, that hasn't been started up yet.
Okay, so nothing's been started up there.
Right, so the lid, what's been the major holdup was that this lid up here, which technically wasn't required by the contract, but they decided they were gonna put it in force anyway. So that lid was not able to function as intended, so they were bringing in additional hydraulic rams to extend it out further. Well, the first time they sent 2 hydraulic rams down here, they sent them with different stroke lengths, and you can't open a lid in the same direction if they don't extend the same stroke length. So they brought in they got some new ones installed, tried to do startup last week, having some issues they're trying to work through now. I was hoping to report today that that had been started up. It will work in manual, it will not work in automatic right now, so we're working through those issues. But we did take a dump truck that we have, threw some sludge in there just to be safe, and it will run in manual right now.
Does there need to be a chain or some kind of additional protection around the left side of the planned west side of the?
That's all gonna be redone. That thing's got to be lowered, that whole thing's gotta be redone from a
It
design
looks like there's a
perspective.
gap there, somebody will walk.
There is, and that will be corrected as part of the design changes. That'll have to be paid for by the design professional.
Maybe just a plastic yellow
Yeah,
chain.
we'll put something up there. Yes.
Okay. All right, moving along. Project 2014 Pump Station 2002 Force Main Replacement. This project is performed in-house, construction-wise, in-house by Systems Pumping and Maintenance personnel.
They are currently they're currently working to get the out from underneath the roadway at the intersection of Arnold and Demery. They got it yesterday out from underneath the roadway at the station. Once they're fully out from underneath the roadway today, tomorrow we will pressure test the line, assuming it passes pressure test, which there's no reason it shouldn't pass the pressure test. We will make the tie-ins tomorrow or Friday. Arnold Road, either way, will be paved starting on Monday. So we are outside the roadway, so we will be paving Arnold Road on Monday.
And this was all put in by us
We installed all of it, yes, sir.
at a big savings.
The original bid was $900,000. Staff time and everything was pipe. Everything was just well. We're out there now. Last month when I ran the numbers was under $400,000.
Okay. Next project is the Arco Area Water and Sewer Extension Project. I would say we're over 30% complete with that project now. Commissioners will remember a while back, or several meetings back, we approved an easement back behind homes.
Is that what we see on that picture?
Yes, sir. So the disturbed area you see back where the arrow is moving back and forth is that easement that facilitated these homes that are being refurbished right now to now connecting to gravity sewer. So they were formerly on septic systems, and it's quite evident that they needed to be connected to this new system. So it's a fantastic opportunity for these folks. And then also on the other side, these folks will be connecting as well, just outside of the picture.
And we're finding a lot of interest stuff about the septic tanks, right?
Yes, sir, we are. I think the septic systems in that area had served their time and were very tired. So it's a timely connection to the public system. And this exhibits the contractors a little bit further along than this picture from when this picture was taken, which you can see some activity going on there, a lot of hands on deck with UWS, our prime contractor. Bottom picture shows some more, another shot up the easement behind the homes there, and then some pipe going in the ground, pretty typical what you see on site.
What percent are we through on that?
I would estimate it 30 to 35%. It's a little bit more than we have listed up here on the title bar.
We got some renewed production going on now after the first year.
2 o'clock today. Well, matter of fact, right now on site, they're having their bi-weekly project meeting between the engineer of record, our staff, and the contractor. That's 2 o'clock every other Wednesday. Okay, galvanized replacements, ongoing project here with in-house forces
In-house forces and that horizontal drilling contract we
and the
just
horizontal drilling, which candidly from operations, they really enjoy that contract, having that tool at their disposal. So you can see here, this is Jason taking a self picture, I guess a picture of his hand, but he's holding a piece of galvanized pipe here that exhibits the why it needs to be replaced. Tuberculation, you can kind of see in there. And then down the bottom 2 shots, so you see the guys in action doing a repair there. You see the new poly tubing going in for a service line. That's that blue 1-inch poly tubing. And then that bottom right picture shows a typical piece of metallic coming out of the ground.
That's amazing.
It's something else. You can see how thin that is. I mean, that's just, that was a galvanized nipple there. Okay. Moving along, meter replacements. So in progress still, and I think around 9,000 plus, or excuse me, 19,000 plus meters. Is that correct? Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Some good pictures of the M&E folks in action, and it's pretty impressive how fast they move with these swap outs. They have a system down. Pull the lids, drill them, put the new antennas in there, and get them reinstalled back in service quickly.
A question, do we have enough meters to complete the project on already we've received?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Tell anybody.
I know we got them early because the price was going up.
What's the value on those, man?
Don't
We're
tell
able to
me.
flip them and,
Any extras we could sell off?
No.
that's what I'm wondering.
No extras.
I know a guy.
Know a guy. So, yeah, very quick moving project there. And, I'll just note, it's every new meter that goes in the ground, working with M&E to take survey grade GPS shots of those meters. So with every new meter that goes in the ground, our mapping gets improved. So when we have to go out and locate a meter, et cetera.
Did we find that meter in the marsh yet?
We've got several we're showing in the
The way we
marsh.
previously had them GPS, they did a drive-by GPS type thing, and they tried to pick up
Yeah.
the meters, and one of them apparently is floating out there in the marsh.
Yeah, that was,
Obviously, there's no meter in the marsh, but there's a point out there.
yeah.
Is this project gonna come in under the budget?
That's the hope, yes, sir. We still have about another 8 to 10 months worth of field installations though. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and certainly be
Okay.
cognizant of that question, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Dunbar Creek Water Pollution Control Facility.
Yes, so Dunbar Creek, we have, contractor has remobilized. We've been waiting on some materials for a while. What you see photos of there is installation of new RAS piping and aeration piping being relocated for the new diffusers, which are set to be delivered end of this month. That tank has been painted, sealed, the whole 9 yards, new grate, not new grading, but we replaced a few sections of grading in there. We're anxiously waiting on those diffusers to be installed so we can get that tank back online and take the other one offline. The green lines you see coming up there, that's an air line. There'll be one on either side. You see there's one on the other side. There'll be 2 air lines coming in. And the brown line adjacent to that's the RAS line coming in. So the piping they're installing in the pictures below will tie into that RAS line. So we'll have dedicated RAS feeds. Right now they all come into the same pipe and then split off. So you don't really have control over the RAS going into the individual basins. We're gonna have dedicated lines, so that we could, modulate that flow as necessary. But go to GIS on Dunbar Creek.
Yep.
As, the chairman gave us a preview of earlier, we will be having a new change order on this project. I am waiting on pricing. It is being fixed now before we get the pricing. Because we have a huge sinkhole that has opened up on St. Simon, on that plant. Let me just come up there, rather than trying to explain this, so. That's the wrong thing. All right, if you recall, early on in this project,
Right.
this line right here, between this wet well and this wet well, collapsed, and it's been replaced. This line here, this 30-inch line here has now collapsed as well. It collapsed middle of last week, and then in the rain event this weekend, it swallowed a whole lot of dirt.
What do you call a whole lot of dirt? I mean,
14 truckloads is what the estimate is.
like 10 by 10, 20 by 20, how big is that?
There's 2 big sinkholes that come out there, right?
2 big sinkholes out
I'm
there.
just curious how big.
Yeah, that line's 15 foot deep. That contractor estimated that they'd had to bring in 14 dump truckloads of dirt to fill it in.
let's zoom that out a little bit, Andrew, just a little bit.
Whoop, went the wrong way.
So
How
we
big
can,
is this
so we
line?
can show the
30
entrance
inch.
road.
30 inch, yeah, that's what I thought.
Let's talk about the entrance road while you're talking about this too.
Okay, so first thing on the change order that we're looking at doing, this section has collapsed down here, so this is gonna have to be replaced. My recommendation and what they're ordering pipe for right now is to replace from this manhole right here all the way back to this box. If this line's already failed and this line's already failed, the rest of that line's not in good enough shape to keep in service.
And it could fail and create.
It could fail
issues with the
immediately.
line we just put in.
Exactly. So we're just gonna replace this whole line. Pipe is supposed to be here into this week, first of next week. So,
And right now, they're bypass.
right now it's on bypass. We're by,
And it's 15 foot deep.
yeah. Well, right now it's not 15 foot deep because there's no dirt on top of it, so.
I mean, when you replace it, you gotta put.
This
trench
dewatering,
dewatering,
boxes, everything.
sprinkles.
So to give you an estimate, this 30-inch line from here to here cost us $100,000.
I remember that.
So it's not gonna be linear, obviously,
Right.
but it's not going to be a small change order when we bring it in here. Hoping to have that to you next month. Now, entrance road, as the chairman was talking about. Okay, we talked about needing to add, let me turn this off, because it's getting in the way. Go away. We talked about needing to add an additional clarifier. These are clarifiers. To get to 5 MGD, we would need to add a third clarifier. The most logical location to put that is right here. Right now, there now is filters and UV, which as part of and already funded in the project are being relocated down here. So to put in a full width clarifier like these two, and as part of the contract, we've got awarded this roadway coming in will become the main entrance into the plant. Because currently the main entrance to the plant goes through the Glen Haven neighborhood, and we're trying to get out of having to drive through Glen Haven. It's very crowded. We want to be out of that residential area as best we can. We'll still have a temporary, we can still go that direction, but that's not going to be the main entrance once this is done. But to put in an 80-foot diameter clarifier here, we're going to need to swing the road out further this way, and you notice there are ponds here.
Is that what that is there?
These are ponds, yes.
Is it a natural pond or is it a?
There was ponds that were part of the original treatment plant that was there. So we own the ponds. We're gonna.
Wetlands then, it's man-made.
It's man-made, yes. This is wetlands.
Yes, right.
Now, what's the cost, the contractor's cost for paving that road as it is?
Currently, without putting in this clarifier and just coming up this road and swinging in and filling in a little bit of this to give us a little bit more width on the roadway is $450,000. If we're gonna put in a clarifier one day, whether that's today or 5 or 10 years from now, we need to swing this road wider out here, and we're gonna need to fill in more of that pond to do that.
Did you go around the tanks the other side? I mean, it looks like we got a lot of parcels.
This is
there.
the fence line.
But I mean, we own the parcel beyond that fence, don't
We
we?
don't.
Zoom in, it look, the problem.
There's a property line right
Oh,
there.
there, okay. Who owns the other parcel?
There's no room.
I think it's the island.
That's all wetlands
Can you
back
click
there
on it?
too.
Don't worry about it.
I don't, hang on, let me see.
That's fine, nothing to worry about.
I can get there.
I thought you were on the GIS.
I was, but that one doesn't have the owners
Yeah,
on
yeah,
it.
yeah, I'm with you. You don't have to do that, Andrew.
Hang on, it'll take 2 seconds. If I could zoom in or zoom out the right direction, we'd be a lot quicker.
And tell us what the price of the clarifier is, Andrew.
$4 million. See, Alan.
And that would increase the capacity from 4 to 5.
The aeration improvements we're putting in, we're replacing the diffusers in these aeration basins because they need to be replaced anyway. But we're going in and putting the aeration capacity for 5 million gallons in there because if we're going to replace it, we might as well go ahead and do that. The filters and the UV system that's being installed will have the hydraulic and treatment capacity for 5 million gallons a day. So we're already
That's
putting
all.
in that stuff. The only thing that if we got to the point where we said we need to go to 5, the only additional thing that would have to be put in is that clarifier.
And this is paid for out of the $15 million bond issue.
Yes. This is paid for out of the bond issuance, yes.
So the burning question is, should we make the road cut off, fill in more of the water, of the pond and make the road go there for the
That,
road?
well, that's the thing. It would be prudent to do that, because whenever you wanted to put the clarifier in, you're good to go. Where it's done now, if we decided 5 years from now to put that clarifier in, you're gonna have to redo the roadway at that point.
Can you zoom on in?
Yeah.
I'm just,
I know, sorry. I always zoom out first, but yes.
it just seems like there's, even with that round thing there, it seems like there'd be room for the road.
Hang on. Where's the drawing thing at?
Probably be scraping the side of it on the way by.
I mean, it's only one lane, it only gotta be one lane traffic.
It's 2-lane traffic. If it's the main entrance, it'll be,
Can you draw a circle in there, Andrew?
That's
I
what
mean,
I'm trying
not
to
two
figure.
lanes at one time, I'm saying.
we're planning for a 16-foot roadway.
Which is not a wide road.
Not a wide road at all.
Not considering you're gonna have a lot of trucks coming in there.
I'm just
right?
looking at the scale of those two vehicles right there.
We definitely need to pave that road.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
I drove down it today. It's,
I just wondered if we truly had to get into the pond or the room for that.
So there'd be additional cost to fill in more of the pond and move the road.
filling a portion of the pond.
How do I draw it? It's been a minute. How do I draw a circle on here? It's been a minute.
I only know to do it if you go to layouts.
And there's no way to cut through because the blower building's right there, so you can't go straight
Right,
through
no,
Right.
yeah.
Well, that's the wrong one. Oh, stop.
in the
Could
aeration basins.
be the object. Well, that's a pretty good guess right there by me.
I was saying, that was pretty good, first time out.
Pretty lucky.
All right. I'm going to call that skill, even though it clearly was not. So, to your point, Commissioner, that's roughly where where it would be at.
So clearly
That's
you
the
have
edge
to
of the
go,
bank
yeah.
right there.
Yeah, it's
You're
tighter than what I was thinking.
you're very tight out there.
And do they have to be that close together? Just makes sense for
Well,
them.
it's gonna be a little bit farther apart than that.
Yeah, be a little further apart. The other option, which highly complicates the piping, would be to put that thing right here.
Yeah.
It could be done. Makes the piping highly complicated to do that, and would be more costly on piping because you're going to reroute to LA via Omaha to do that.
So I think we need to get a price from the contractor to do this.
He's working it up.
Yeah. I mean, we need to prepare for the future for sure. I mean, there's no question about that. So,
And y'all are familiar with and now we got a bypass pump, got 2 bypass pumps out there.
There's currently 2. They're bringing in a bigger bypass pump
from the collapsed line.
from the collapse
Yeah,
line.
yeah.
Electric or diesel?
They're diesel.
The other thing at the headworks, show
hard to
them
get
where the
electric
headworks is, Andrew.
Oh, okay, Headworks is right here.
And, right now, we're having issues there because the bypass pumps are not able to keep up. And so we're backing up into the equipment right there. And it's,
At high flows, it'll fill in this a little bit. It's not causing major problems, but it will require some work once we get it done. They're bringing in, we got 2 6-inch pumps there now because that's what we had on hand. They're bringing in a 12-inch pump and a backup, which should correct that issue.
and we're gonna have odor control at that headworks.
Yes, this will be covered like the one at Academy Creek is. There will be an odor control unit, I believe, sitting right here. And then one thing we're going to do, which I'm hoping will be successful, honestly. If you've ever been by this manhole right here, occasionally you will smell something at that manhole. We're going to run odor control piping from this unit all the way out here and draft air out of that manhole. So we're putting in an oversized odor control unit to pull from that far.
To put in that clarifier is not gonna be any cheaper than it is today.
It is not going to be any cheaper than it is today. You are 100%
I'd
correct.
like for us to figure out a way to put that clarifier in and
I
the
agree.
road.
Yeah.
That's right.
So when we're putting the road in, are we gonna put an ACL lane in?
Not required.
I know it's not required, but I don't know it's not required. but-
It's not required.
But even if it's not required, I travel that road a lot and it is.
I got that in writing.
I'm just thinking for our trucks to be able to get out, I mean, that is
What we've agreed to do
and it's
in,
a high-speed road.
in
too.
lieu
High-speed,
of
very
in
busy
lieu
road.
of putting an A cell and D cell lane in or anything like that, we will not be pulling our equipment out of passenger vehicles, but not our sludge truck or any equipment out of there between 6 and 8 in the morning and between 4 and 6 in the afternoon. So we'll come out at theoretically lower traffic times,
Theoretically.
theoretically.
Yeah, I mean, I can see, you know, again, not doing a decel lane, but the ACell lane, I'm just thinking that is a sharp turn for a big truck loaded down with stuff on a very high-speed road that is back to back to back traffic. You're never gonna have that, you know, large gap in traffic that, right there, I shouldn't say.
Well, we come in and out of there now already as is with that sludge truck.
Okay,
It's not ideal because it's not paved, but we do come out of there now to avoid having to go through the neighborhood.
okay.
Would y'all agree we need to see how we can finance that?
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah, I think we need to
In the
plan
road,
for the
too.
future here, yeah.
It makes sense to me to have an ACell lane too, I understand that.
We can look at what that would add to it, sure. Now, Glynn County is fixing to do some stormwater work down here. That has nothing to do with our project, but will add a layer of complexity to our project.
And we've already purchased all the equipment for this project.
I got the note, what was that? It's on my phone, not the clarifier,
No,
but for
but all
the,
the other equipment.
the filters are March, not the UV. I had it backwards. Filters March, UV May.
And the tank you see right here is the one that was repainted. That's a steel.
That's correct.
Drew, I know we use a lot of bypass pumps. Did we ever do the analysis to see what it costs us to own those versus renting them every time we have?
The two that are currently sitting there now at Dunbar, we own.
Fine.
Those are ones
I
we
just
have.
mean in general, though.
In general, we have not had a project bid since we had that discussion that included extensive bypass. That's something we did talk, we
Just
did
like
talk
last
about.
time we looked at having the contractor provide bypass during that time frame,
Yeah,
that it was a pretty extensive cost.
If
And I
you're
realize
gonna-
there's some labor associated with that, et cetera, but if we might could take and over the course of 2 projects, buy a bypass, let the capital pay for them, and then at the end of those 2 projects, we end up with an
Right.
additional bypass pump.
now, we don't own any portable 12-inch pumps, because that's just not a flow rate we're typically gonna need to bypass. So the 12-inch they're bringing in for this project, that will be rented because of the size.
It's still worth running the cost. I mean, you know, the ROI is 5 months of rent, and you're going to end up having 5 or 6 plus. I mean, you might end up
Yeah, it's
being better off
hopefully,
buying.
now, the contractor said he would have that pipe installed in a week. I think that's probably aggressive. I think you're probably looking closer to 2 or 3 weeks to get that done. But then we'll be off bypass for that one.
My only point is,
Yeah, I think it's
we ought
very
to
valid.
look at it, you know, look at options of buying versus renting, because sometimes it's better to buy something than to rent.
Right.
So with the replacement of this line that's just collapsed, are we gonna, it's gonna be a contractor, we're not gonna do anything in-house?
Contractor's gonna do that one.
Because with the other one we did in-house, is that correct?
No, the contractor did that one too.
It's the same contractor that we have under
It's the
contract.
same contractor's
Already-
already on site.
Already on site,
On the
okay.
design
All right,
build.
that's fine,
So you get a price from them, they're already on site.
right. They don't have to mobilize, they're there. Okay.
Yeah, the small sinkhole started like Wednesday or Thursday of last week. And we started talking about bringing in bypass and dewatering and seeing if we could replace one section in the line, the rest of it, and then Sunday morning at 3 o'clock, I got the phone call that they found that.
Okay.
Literally couldn't get through one weekend. We were trying to get everything set up.
All right, ready? Okay. Next project we're gonna talk about is our elevated storage tank rehab project. So typically we do 2 tanks at a time with this. Right now we're doing the mall tank. We call it the mall tank. It's out there close to Glen Place Mall. And also the Oglethorpe tank on St. Simon's Island up off of Frederica. So you can look right here. If you drive out there, you've probably seen it, and you probably may have never even noticed that tank out there. But now you surely will, because it's got a skirt around it. And, that's a containment wall. It's fabric that they hang with cables, and that keeps all the, it's called Black Beauty. It's a silica-free abrasive they use to blast down to white metal, clean metal, and then repaint and prime. And so that kind of grayish, greenish look right there is the primer coat that they go back on, and they're doing it immediately after they blast that tank. So the inside is done pretty much in the same fashion. That's what you see there, the final
You don't
coat.
have to put the containment for the inside.
Correct. Self-contained on the inside, correct. So good shot there of the Oglethorpe tank. there, and if, that one's well due for rehab and painting. You can see, if you notice some discoloration here on the side of the tank here, that's from a resident osprey that builds a nest here annually. And they take off and move elsewhere in September, so the osprey is not there right now. We're rehabbing its home while it's away. So, but they're inside doing a lot of the internal rehab, replacing ladders, all that kind of thing, structural stuff, blasting, etc. And AT&T, you see all this corral of antennas up here. And so AT&T, in this case, leases the space from us and pays a fee to do that through contract. They're disconnecting all their stuff, and they call it COW. It's a temporary portable antenna they're going to put up next door, and they're actually going through agreements with the Baptist church next door to use their property to do that. That takes all the big cables and whatnot out of the center, lets our guys go in there and do what they need to do. And they're actually taking these big bundles of cables. The last facilities, we had some good pictures, removing all that stuff, and it's only going to be about 3 cables going, or conduits going up at this point. The technology's changed, and it's not quite those conduits or relics at this point. So, but it's pretty fantastic to see. A lot of respect for those folks that climb those tanks and do that work.
What do we get paid a month for leasing that to the
We
AT&T?
get about $330,000 a year, so what, $28,000 a month?
Wow.
Not from that one, but from system-wide. System-wide,
Wow.
it's $330,000 a year. And that has been steadily increasing as more carriers have attached to our units.
And they're responsible for all the maintenance,
Oh, yeah, we don't do
replacement.
anything
Yeah, we're not involved in it.
That's right. And this is a good example of that. It's a good question, Commissioner. When we have to rehab a tank, it's in the contracts for them to accommodate that rehab. So that's why it's no cost to Joint Water for them to remove their stuff and temporarily, do what they need to do, get out of the way for us to do. But we work real closely with them so that we're not unduly, interrupting their services.
It may be an opportunity for them to upgrade some of their things they have. on
Very true.
newer-
They are doing that in this situation, putting
Yep.
some,
Yeah.
That's exactly what they're doing. So, works out well. Okay, Commissioner Stevens, this may be your first time seeing this one here, being in facilities. So what we also include in the picture report, or the capital product report, is just a spreadsheet of all the ongoing. So you'll notice there's several more projects listed in here that are in different stages of motion that don't show up on the picture report. The picture report is stuff underway in construction. So if there's not much really to see, it's just in, say, design. It's going to be included also in the comprehensive list here. So a lot of numbers in there, different costs and change orders associated and whatnot. In the very end, we'll estimate a percentage completion, and then on the status notes on the very right is a real short synopsis of where the project stands.
On this, could you start color coding this to show something as far as 60 or 70% of something complete or
Sure.
under construction?
Certainly. We can break that down into a color
'Cause
schematic there.
This is pretty busy.
Yes.
It's a pretty busy chart.
It is, a lot of information. That's why we normally leave it for, if there's any questions for the commissioners to ask. We don't normally walk through this one, but certainly can ask any questions here.
Just a thought, and, again, this is my first time looking at it in depth. I've seen it before, it's just informationally, but it might make sense to convert all these numbers to thousands. I mean, just because it's very,
Okay.
that's just my 2 cents. It makes it easier to read if, when you get.
looks like smaller numbers, there's not as many numbers on the page.
Well, I mean, when you're just looking at 1,712,653,
Oh, yeah.
it kind of blends in with especially when some of them got decimal points, some of them don't. I mean, so that 275,000 looks like a really big number because it's got two digits behind the decimal. So as you're scanning down, you're like, whoa, that's 27 million. And you're like, oh, no, that's 275,000. If all the numbers were just in the same format, no matter what the format is,
Sure,
get rid of the decimal points, in my opinion, at a minimal,
yes.
but maybe even convert it to thousands, because most of these are in the millions. And it would really make the things that are 20 million, stand out more than the 3 million if it was representing thousands, like our financials.
Yes, sir.
Just my 2 cents.
Certainly. Okay. And then we do have the totals down at the bottom. If you want a quick snapshot of, say, how much we have in projects going on at the moment and whatnot. Those are down at the very bottom. You could glimpse there. We also include a Gantt chart that gives estimated schedules for the projects. It also, again, it's another way to look at the list of projects and the, you know, whatever phase that they're in as well. It's kind of grouped by that. And then lastly, we'll include, it's called earned value assessment spreadsheet. And generally, Mr. Burrows will plug in the financials into there, but what it does is it calculates, gives us a metric based around a score of 1,
Yep.
how we're doing on the project. And there's,
So the chairman asked me to kind of go through what all these acronyms are on here. So starting at the top, you got your project manager, concept, the detail, and who's doing the construction. The BAC is budget at completion. That is the budget set before the project begins. So if something comes up in the middle and there's a change order, that number does not change. PV is planned value. This is the way the calculation works. Planned value is based off of the percentage of contract time used. So obviously it's not 100% linear because the engineering contract might be 120 days and it's, let's say, $200,000. The construction contract might be $2 million and it's 365 days. So it's the percentage of the engineering multiplied by the value of the budget for engineering. And it's percentage of the construction contract that has been used multiplied by the value of construction for the total value there of planned value. So you'll see some of them obviously that haven't been released for construction yet. The planned value is very low. Earned value is the estimated amount of work that has actually been completed. So if the project is estimated at 80% complete, then the earned value is 80% multiplied by the engineering and construction budget. Actual cost is actual payments to date on the project. Earned value should always be above the actual cost because they bill 30 days, once a month. They should be doing more work and completing more than what the actual cost is.
So earned value includes retainage,
Yes.
and actual value does not.
The actual value, the way this report is pulled, retainage is considered expended on the project report and is held in a different account on the balance sheet, so it does include retainage on actual cost.
Actual cost is not paid, it's actual accrued.
Actual accrued cost, that's correct. SV is a schedule variance. That is the earned value minus the planned value, or the planned value minus the earned value, whichever way that works. But so if the planned value says we should be 75% through with the contract, but they've only done 40%, then the schedule is negative because they haven't got as much as they should have got done at this point. Cost variance is the earned value minus the actual cost. Again, unless there's been change orders to the project, in theory, that should always be positive because we haven't paid out as much as they've actually completed.
So, well, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. What you got?
Again, just my 2 cents, but other than the budget at completion, which you're entering one time, how much time are y'all investing into tracking all these individual numbers? I mean,
It's not a considerable amount of time. The project report's a standard report we run out of our financial system that gives us all the cost, and it's just updating what the percentage completion is.
You're just plugging numbers in.
Just plugging
from the-
numbers in.
everything else just calculates out.
Everything else calculates by itself.
Okay.
It just seems to me like there's a lot of detail when really what you want to know is what was the budget and how we're doing.
Right. ETC is estimate at completion. That's a calculated figure based off the actual cost to date, the budget, and what the CPI, which we'll get to in a minute. That's estimate to complete ETC. EAC is estimate at completion, which is actual cost plus the estimate to complete. And variance at completion is, again, a calculated figure based off of where we're at on expenses to date versus the budget versus what has been completed and all of that. All right, the SPI is the schedule performance index. A 1 means you are on schedule. A number lower than 1 means you are behind schedule. A number above 1 means you're ahead of schedule. And that is the schedule set at the beginning of the project. So, to note there, as the project gets closer to completion, it is dollar weighted for schedule, so it will get closer to 1 even if it's 200 days behind schedule because you've spent the money planned at that point.
Who develops this chart?
Cost performance is the same way. If the cost is below 1, if the cost is 1, you spent exactly the amount of money to date that you should have spent. If the cost is above 1, that means that you spent less money than theoretically you should have spent. If it's above less than 1, you spent more money than you should have spent. And then TCPI is the 2 complete performance index. That is a ratio essentially of telling you how much more effort needs to be put in to bring the project under completion at schedule and on budget. So once the project is finished, the TCPI is 0. If the project comes in over budget and has already exceeded the budget, it goes negative because you can't get there. And then essentially it gives you a ratio of how much more effort you need to put into the project. So if you look at the cumulative totals at the bottom, this is dollar weighted, obviously, so keep that in mind at all times with this figure. 83% on schedule overall for our project expenses on schedule. 97% on cost, where our costs are 3% higher than what we would have projected them to be at this point. And then the TCPI at 1.06 indicates that we need to put 6% more effort, in theory, into our projects. You want all of these to be, you want the schedule and the cost to be above 1 ideally, and the TCPI to be below 1, because that means or at 1, so that means you're putting an appropriate amount of effort into the project.
Not trying to change anything being new on the committee, but it seems, for the board level, it seems like it'd be easier to just have, this is the original budget, this is the revised budget inclusive of change order, percent completion, retainage held, and estimated expenditures remaining.
Well, that's on here on the other report.
Cause all the other stuff is, if all you're doing is hitting print, that's one thing, but it just seems like you're putting a lot of effort into something that probably gets glossed over.
Ms. Janice, what do you think? 10 minutes when you call me and say, hey, you haven't done the EVA report before I send it to you?
Yeah, he's very fast.
I just,
How many other people have,
Yeah. Now, when I built the original spreadsheet, it took a lot longer than that, but now that it's built, it's pretty straightforward.
Chuck, do you look at those numbers? Do you look at those numbers?
I do, yeah. Yeah, no, I like that. I think it gives you more of an executive view overall of what's going on. I happen to like, I don't know how many other people in the organization look at it.
It's essentially just the 4 project managers, me, Todd, Jason, Harry, and then you got the board sees it.
I think everyone's on the same page then, overall, view of it.
Again, this was requested by boards in the past. If that's not something y'all want to see, we can obviously change the way we're reporting.
10 minutes? 10 minutes?
10 minutes? I mean, I don't have to put 10 minutes into it if we don't need to. It is what it is.
Okay. Anybody have anything else?
and just a general comment, we're done. Just a general comment, this is all very helpful, and especially all the detailed reports about the water flow and the inflow and outflow at the plants. Affluent and influent flow, I guess I should have said, but very, very educational for me. Thank y'all for all the detailed reports and everything. And the pictures are certainly very helpful.
And when we get all the new meters in, we're gonna have even more information.
When we have the new meters in, we'll be able to give you from January 1st to January 31st what the metered usage is compared to what the well production numbers are.
And that's only a 10-minute report also, right?
Yeah, we get the daily totals.
Right, no, I mean, that's
pull up
right
in the
there.
system, it tells you what the daily usage is now, but it's only 19,000 of the 30,000.
Right.
The
Yeah.
number crunching for the machine.
Yeah, the machine does a whole lot of work to give you that, but we just pull it up on a dashboard.
Okay, great.
Anything else?
That's it.
Doing nothing. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
We're adjourned.
This is why you sit there.
Wow.